father told him very specifically that they were not legal, even though they were within. Don't ask me. I don't know what the criteria was. Oh, I didn't know that. How are things in Israel? Not real good. I have. Yeah, I know. Yesterday. Oh no, Friday. Yeah, yeah. I heard. I have. Well, from my being there, I heard friends that I spoke to. Cousin. No, the time. She read some blog. Yeah, it's
they have higher positive positivity.
yeah.
Here in Ohio, we go around.
Here in Ohio, and I'm really surprised. Yeah, I am very surprised that Governor Wine, I really am.
He manages pretty well.
Yeah, I would not, I would not have thought of him, but I'm very pleasantly surprised with how he's been handling it. Yeah.
He used to keep on reminding people to wear the mask.
Right.
I see people gathering outside.
I know. It bothers me.
Yeah, and then of course outside in
It makes no sense to me. I keep thinking to myself, if they don't like following the rules that are being directed by the government, how do they drive a car? I mean, don't they get a driver's license and don't they have to pass a test to drive a car?
well, I think that I might long days.
I'm good. How are you doing? I think about you often. How are things going? How's Eddie? Is he coming? Okay, he's here. Hi, Eddie. Hi, Jeff. Goodbye, dear. Yes. Hi, Royal. How are you? How can anybody be these days? I am scared. You know what? About what's going to happen in November. I can just see it. I am just scared out of my mind. I really am. I try not to think about it, but gosh, yeah. I am so scared. This country has never faced anything like this before. We've got a dictator in the making, and people don't seem to understand that. Yeah. No, they won't. They won't talk to you. I've got people in my circle who are the same way. They won't talk to you. They just said the Democrats are lying. Trump doesn't lie. Trump doesn't lie. The only thing he ever does is lie. Oh yeah. I am lying. Rabbi, oh, okay. I'll talk to you guys later. Yeah, Rabbi,
Yep.
I want you to stay after when the morning service is tomorrow. I want to stay okay. All right.
We won't do a formal service together, but
Okay, all right, great. Thank you.
How many times do you want me to do or what?
Oh, I think
I'll do three.
three, yeah, three.
So three of each, like.
Okay,
Okay.
that works.
Okay. Cool.
Just feels so weird. Doesn't it?
3 of each, like 3 of the.
Okay. I had another one burning in there too, just in case. Oh, I didn't see yours, but that's all right. I can't wait. Good evening, Shana Tova, and Good Yom Tov. I will introduce myself again, even though I know everybody, I think. I am Rabbi Noah Farrow here at Northern Hills Synagogue, for those random folks out on the internet that don't know where they are, and anyone who might be here who doesn't know where they are. Just a quick reminder. We're joined tonight by, of course, our president, Bill Friedman, and also our Shalech Zibor, Ari Cohen, as well as our cantorial soloist, Leanne Galiotto. We begin on page 204. Please rise.
Ozaru ala tzadik uleishelev simcha. 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 Vishiva shel mala uvishiva shel mata, al dat hamakom ve'al dat hakahalai. Anu matirin litpalel im ha'avaryanim. Vishiva shel mala uvishiva shel mata, al dat hamakom ve'al dat hakahal. Anu matirin litpalel im ha'avaryanim. Vishiva shel mala uvishiva shel mata, al dat hamakom ve'al dat hakahal. Anu matirin litpalel im ha'avaryanim. Kol nidre v'sarei v'charame v'koname v'chinuye v'kinusei u'shevuot din dana u'deish tabana u'de'acharim na ve'dasana nashatana miyom kippurim זה עד יום כיפורים. הבא עלינו לטובה. כולהון איחרת נא והון, כולהון יהון שירן, שוויקין, שוויתין, בטלין ומבוטלין לשרירין ולקיימין, נדרנה לנדרי, וסרנה לסרי. ושבועתנה לשבועות, כל נדרי ושרי, וחרמי וקונמי, וכינויי וכינוסי, ושבועות, דין דרנה, ודאשתבנה, ודאחרים נא, ודעשרנה נפשתנה, מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים. הבא עלינו לטובה. כולהון איחרת נא והון, כולהון יהון שירן, שוויקין, שוויתין, בטלין ומבוטלין לשרירין ולקיימין, נדרנה לנדרי, וסרנה לסרי. ושבועתנה לשבועות, כל נדרי ושרי, וחרמי וקונמי, וכינויי וכינוסי, ושבועות, דין דרנה, ודאשתבנה, ודאחרים נא, ודעשרנה נפשתנה, מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים. הבא עלינו לטובה. כולהון איחרת נא והון, כולהון יהון שירן, שוויקין, שוויתין, בטלין ומבוטלין לשרירין ולקיימים, נדרנה לנדרי, ושרנה לשרי. ושבועתנה לשבועות. ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל, ולגר הגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה, ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל, ולגר הגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה, ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל, ולגר הגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה. סלח נא לעוון העם הזה כגודל חסדך, וכאשר נסעת לעם הזה ממצרים ועד הנה, ושם נאמר, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדברך, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדברך, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדברך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Shana Tova. This has been a year with a lot of cancellations. We've canceled sporting events, theater shows, and date nights. We've canceled birthday parties, anniversaries, and family reunions. We've canceled classes, from religious school to preschool to high school to grad school. And we've canceled religious services, even funerals and bar and bat mitzvah celebrations. But with all the spare time and energy that those cancellations have given us, many of us have also seen fit to try to add a few more. I'm referring here to a regrettable phenomenon in our public discourse known as cancel culture. This refers to the process of placing certain people or ideas under a kind of ban, like a rabbinic decree of cherem or excommunication. We should hold no business or conversation with these particular figures or their words, the thinking goes. It's a trend that should trouble all of us, not because we never know when they might come calling for our own darlings and sacred cows, but because it lets us get away with being self-indulgent, with failing to challenge ourselves or our thinking. And this is because it flies in the face of Jewish tradition and the themes of our present Yom Kippur observance. A couple of months ago, I read an article by Alan Dershowitz specifically about one aspect of so-called cancel culture, ongoing efforts to remove statues of fallen or flawed heroes, particularly Confederate Southern generals. Dershowitz manages in his article to get some things wrong, but also several right. One error, I would say, is he seems to suggest that all the dead white guys belong together, General Washington together with General Lee, as though the accidental racism of William Shakespeare and the vitriolic racism of George Wallace were the same animal. If you know your history, that's not the problem with the so-called heroism of Robert E. Lee or of Christopher Columbus, for that matter. It's rather that their accomplishments come with a great many disclaimers, limited to a rather narrowly defined context. Whatever high-minded values or aspirations they held, whatever nobler struggles they may have engaged in their lives, these are not what they're known for. They were a small part of their story. They showed kindness, perhaps, and decency to certain people, but actively advanced the widespread dehumanization and exploitation of a great many others, people they didn't find worthy of certain rights or human dignity. But George Washington and Thomas Jefferson are a bit more complicated. These men believed that all people were, theoretically, created equal, and that circumstances brought some to mastery and others to slavery. In their thinking, flawed though it was, good masters could make use of all of their resources, including slaves, for the betterment of all people, including slaves. They clung to good values, at least in the abstract, but their application was sadly lacking. Despite their flaws, despite being part of a flawed society, they toiled to set into motion certain processes that continue to have a beneficial effect to this day upon ourselves and on our posterity. It is specifically concerning figures like these that Dershowitz hits on a very important and relevant lesson, one which is also deeply Jewish. Heroes need not be perfect. He notes that the Bible contains many less than perfect characters, almost at every turn, and we're meant to learn from their examples. In fact, we need imperfect heroes much more than we could ever need perfect ones. Imperfect heroes give us examples that we can actually follow. They teach us to identify flaws within ourselves, to struggle against those flaws, rather than pretending they don't exist. They demonstrate what it means to be the best sort of human, rather than having to be superhuman entirely. They encourage us to assess ourselves honestly and to accept our limitations without letting ourselves off the hook. Imperfect heroes also model key virtues: openness to change, humility, graciousness, honesty, and they model an ongoing commitment to self-improvement and striving toward integrity. But there's another reason as well why we need imperfect heroes. The perfect ones are fictitious, much like perfect villains. As a general piece of advice you didn't ask for, if you ever find yourself loving or hating absolutely everything a particular person says or does, you're either in the realm of fantasy or you're being manipulated, or both, perhaps viewing a distorted and incomplete story. The Hebrew Bible and the rabbinic tradition try to tell complete stories, more complete stories than this in any case. Their characters make mistakes. They learn, they grow, they show regret. Adam and Eve, Moses, King David, all of these have famous mistakes associated with them. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, the entire school of Shammai, these and so many more are identified in Talmud for their successes as well as their failures. We're able to learn more from these figures' stories because we don't merely exclude them from the tradition when they come up short. In other words, we refuse to cancel them. Cancel culture is something that many social commentators today are quick to dismiss broadly as irrational or infantile. In truth, there is something to be said for a part of the basic premise. When someone's behavior or speech is reprehensible or harmful, it would be dishonest or cowardly not to call them out to account for their words or acts. If anything, calling people to account should be an invitation to further debate and further learning. It can allow for future admissions of past mistakes and broader efforts at redressing past wrongs. As Jews, we recognize that such a response can be needed, for example, in the face of anti-Semitism. Some of you may recall a 2016 incident when Oberlin College fired a professor, Joylyn Carrega-Mason, after she made a series of social media posts claiming that Israeli operatives were behind the September 11th attacks, the downing of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17, and the Charlie Hebdo attacks in Paris. Or you may be familiar with a more recent instance wherein an Ohio doctor, Lara Kalab, lost her medical license after she publicly compared Jews to dogs and joked about deliberately giving Jewish patients the wrong medications. But the reactions to these cases are quite different from merely trying to remove such figures or their ideas from the conversation altogether, to cover them up, refuse to engage with them. Jewish legal tradition tells us that even though we are to incline after the majority, that is, we make rulings according to majority opinion, when we have a dat yachid, a minority opinion, we still make note of it. As Rabbi Yehuda teaches in Mishnah Eduyot, why do they record the opinion of one person against many, only to reject it? So that if someone says, I have received this tradition, then one can say to them, you heard that according to the words of so-and-so. In other words, we want to preserve a record of the entire conversation so we know the discussions we've already had and the opinions we've already accepted or rejected. The fact that most of us don't agree with a certain position doesn't afford us the luxury of pretending it doesn't exist. In fact, engaging in this sort of revisionism cheapens the conversation and only runs the risk that new figures will repeat those same old errors in the future. There's one additional thing we must say about flawed figures and telling whole stories, and this bears directly on two themes of our high holiday season: repentance and atonement. When we tell whole stories, we give people an opportunity to do teshuvah, to make a change, and to choose a better course of action. We don't have to ignore their errors. Hahefech, we offer words of rebuke where they're appropriate, but we also leave room for change and improvement. In a way, we can even offer redemption to people who are no longer living, as the recent hit musical Hamilton helps to demonstrate. Playwright Lin-Manuel Miranda was aware that today much of our intellectual culture casts a very critical eye on the Founding Fathers, and yet his play is in many ways a patriotic celebration of America's history and ideals. For all its casual satire of some figures like James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, others get a fuller, more human treatment. In history, Alexander Hamilton was certainly a philanderer and one with many other flaws as well. Aaron Burr was an erratic and bizarre man who had an affair with a British Army officer's wife, killed a man in a duel, famously, and may even have conspired to commit treason against the United States. But Miranda's retelling neither lets us write these men off as unsympathetic, nor shies away from their faults. It gives us an opportunity to imagine ourselves inside their minds, to try to understand their intentions, their triumphs, and their failures in a new light. Though it's only theater, smoke and mirrors, this treatment offers a certain kind of redemption to two long-dead historical figures we might otherwise have disregarded or consigned to oblivion. If we can take a step like this for characters in plays or fiction, it seems all the more urgent that we ought to offer real chances for teshuvah and reconciliation in our own lives, rather than canceling or discarding whoever or whatever disappoints us. And certainly, if we would ask the same of them, how could we refuse to give it ourselves? An apt question for this Yom Kippur, perhaps, if you're feeling disappointed with certain people in your life, with aspects of your Judaism, or even with God, will you cancel them? Will you say that they're irrelevant and meaningless for you? Or are you prepared to give them an opportunity to redeem themselves before you cast them away for another year? On this night of Kol Nidre, where we carefully consider all the vows and resolutions we've made before and the ones we shall make in the future, may we give ourselves room to engage with conversations and ideas that make us uncomfortable, whether it be a difficult relationship, a notion we disagree with, or just that God we never see. Not to open ourselves to abuse or distort and betray our values, but not to withdraw either from opportunities to think and grow. May we find the tranquility of mind and spirit to be able to confront the frightening, the hurtful, and the absurd without shutting our ears or our hearts. And may this bring us further from service of the self and nearer to service of the holy. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. Gemar Tov, and may you have an easy fast.
As you heard, we are in the midst of a cancellation culture. But I have reassuring news for all of you, whether you are here in person or watching live stream. Our High Holiday Appeal has not been canceled. You know, many features of our High Holiday services can be traced back to the Torah, the foundational basis of our Jewish beliefs and our values. One of the most memorable is the blowing of the shofar, traditionally a ram's horn. You know, in Leviticus, Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the 7th month, is described in part this way. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people thus. In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall observe complete rest, a sacred occasion commemorated with loud blasts." As for Yom Kippur, Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 25, verse 9, says, "You shall proclaim with the shofar blast in the 7th month, on the 10th of the month, on the Day of Atonement, you shall sound the shofar throughout your land." Sounding the shofar and the making of sacrifice are the only two actions mandated for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in the Torah. No explanation or reason is given for the sounding of the shofar. For that matter, the Torah does not describe the first day of the month of Tishrei as Rosh Hashanah, nor does the Torah provide a reason for the celebration of Rosh Hashanah. Now, several Psalms do allude to the sounding of the shofar. Rabbi Reuven Hammer, who after graduating from the Jewish Theological Seminary became the founder of the Masorti conservative movement in Israel and authored the annotated versions of our Sim Shalom prayer books, among many other scholarly and literary works, comments that by the 1st century before the Common Era, Rosh Hashanah had acquired its name and its aura of holiness, and the shofar was seen as a clarion call to alert us to our duty to and love of God, and to the unique and revolutionary way our participation in the mitzvot can repair the world. That same clarion call, sounded every year, also heralds the coming of our High Holiday Appeal. Our participation in our High Holiday Appeal offers each of us a way. It's unique to each of us. It's different in amount for each of us, but it's equally powerful for all of us to renew our synagogue's commitment to a richer, a fuller Jewish experience for the coming year. we have made a socially just pact with each other. We keep dues suppressed to what other synagogues in our region regard as a suicidally low portion of our budget, about 25%. Yet year after year, an overwhelming majority of you, each in your own way, invest in our High Holiday Appeal, which provides almost 50% of our budget. Without that unique, that special, that meaningful commitment, we would be a far different community. This era of the coronavirus pandemic has reinforced our awareness of the vast disparities in our own Northern Hills Synagogue community and in the broader Cincinnati Jewish and non-Jewish community. Your investment in our High Holiday Appeal enables our very small but extraordinarily talented and hardworking staff and the efforts of so many of us as volunteers to enrich the values and the spiritual and the earthly lives of our synagogue community and our broader Cincinnati community. On behalf of our staff, our officers, our trustees, our hard-working High Holiday Appeal Committee, thank you. Thank you for your High Holiday Appeal participation. May we all celebrate a Shana Tova, a year in which we are inscribed in the Book of Life.
Our service continues on page 207. Please rise for Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Please be seated.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים. אהבת עולם בית ישראל. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נהגה יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד.
Adonai Elohechem emet.
We continue with a pre-recorded reading from Debbie and Olivier Fisher. We're on page 210 in the English.
God performs wonders beyond understanding, marvels beyond all reckoning.
God places us among the living, not allowing our steps to falter, the false altars of our enemies.
God exalted us above all those who hated us, avenged us with miracles before Pharaoh, offered signs and wonders in the land of Egypt.
God smote in anger all of Egypt's firstborn, brought Israel from its midst from lasting freedom, led them through the divided water of the Sea of Reeds.
As their pursuing enemies drowned in the depths, God's children beheld the power of the divine.
They praised and acknowledged God's name, willingly accepting God's rule.
Umalchuto beratzon kiblu alehem Moshe ubnei Yisrael lechanu shira besimcha rabba ve'amru chulam michamocha ba'elim Adonai mikamocha nedar b'kodesh nora teilot osefele malchutcha ra'u banecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe zeli anu ve'amru Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. V'ne'emar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov ugealo miad chazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai gal Yisrael.
We continue on page 211 with a responsive reading in the English. Allow us, Adonai, our God, to sleep peacefully and to awaken again to life, our sovereign. Shield us, remove from us enemies and pestilence, sword, starvation, and sorrow, and remove the evil forces that surround us. Ensure our going and coming for life and peace now and forevermore. Baruch atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us, over all the people of Israel, and over Jerusalem.
ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תטהרו.
Please rise if you're still sitting. We're on page 212.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה ועמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יש מרבה ויתבח, ויתפאר, ויתרומם, ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלש, מקודשה בריחו. לעילה, לעילה, מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא, דמרו amen.
We turn now to silent Amidah. Note that it concludes with two confessionals, a shorter confessional and longer confessional, which are recited personally, individually.
Yoseh shalom bimromav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru imru amen.
We turn now to page 224 for our Slichot prayers. We begin with a responsive reading at the top of the page in English. All flesh comes to you, you who hear prayer.
All flesh shall come to worship you, Adonai.
They shall come to bow down before you, Adonai, and they will pay honor to your name.
Come, let us sing to Adonai, cry out to the stronghold of our deliverance.
Let us greet God with thanks and sing songs of praise.
God made it. The land was created by God's hands.
In God's hand is every living soul and the breath of all human flesh.
Nekad mafanav, nekad mafanav, nekad mafanav, bitoda, la 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 bizmirot, bizmirot, narialo, bizmirot, bizmirot, narialo.
Page 225.
הנשמה לך והגוף פעלך, חוסה חוסה על עמלך. הנשמה לך והגוף שלך, אדוני עשה למען שמך, עטנו על שמך, אדוני עשה למען שמך, בעבור כבוד כבוד שמך, כי אל חנון ורחום שמך, למען שמך, שמך אדוני, וסלחת לעווננו כי רב הוא.
We rise and turn to page 226.
ויעבור אדוני על פניו, ויקרא אדוני, אדוני אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה, וסלחת לעווננו לחטאתנו ונחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, מחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו, כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח, ורב חסד לכל קוראיך.
on page 227. As clay in the hand of the potter who thickens or thins it at will, so are we in your hand, guardian of love.
Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer.
A stone in the hand of the mason who preserves or breaks it at will, so are we in your hand, God of life and death.
Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer.
As iron in the hand of the blacksmith who forges or withdraws it at will, so are we in your hand, support of the poor.
Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer.
As the helm in the hand of the sailor who holds the course or abandons it at will, so are we in your hand, good and forgiving God.
Follow your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer.
As glass in the hand of the glazer who shapes or melts it at will, so are we in your hand, pardoner of sin and transgression.
Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer.
As cloth in the hand of the draper who drapes or twists it at will, so are we in your hand, righteous God.
Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer.
As silver in the hand of the smelter who alloys it or refines it at will, so are we in your hand, healer of wounds.
Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer. Labrit habet, vel tiefen la yetzer.
Turn to page 229.
Vayavor Adonai al panav, vayikra Adonai, Adonai el rachum v'chanun erech apayim, v'rav chesed ve'emet, notzer chesed la'alafim, nose avon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh, וסלחת לעווננו לחטאתנו ונחתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, מחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו. כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח ורב חסד לכל קוראיך.
Turn to page 232.
מלך יושב על כיסא רחמים, מתנהג בחסידות, מוחל עוונות עמו, מעביר ראשון, מרבס מחילה לחטאים וסליחה לפושעים, עושה צדקות עם כל בשר ורוח, לא חרתם תגמול. אל הוריתו לנו לומר 13, זכר לנו היום ברית 13, כמו שהודעת לעניו מקדם, כמו שכתוב ויד אדוני בענן ויתייצב עמו שם, ויקרא בשם אדוני, ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon V'Fesha V'Chata V'Nakeh, V'Salachta L'Avonenu U'Lechatatenu U'Nchatanu, Slach lanu avinu ki chatanu, mechalanu malkenu ki fashanu, ki ata Adonai tov v'salach v'rav chesed l'chol korecha.
You may be seated. We read responsively on page 232 at the bottom. Listen to our prayers, God. Hear our pleading, our sorrow-filled voices. May your ear hear and your eyes open to the prayers of your servants, the people Israel. May you forgive your people who have sinned against you. Salvation is Adonai's alone. Pour blessings on your people forever. Adonai Tzvaot is with us, our support, the God of Jacob forever. Adonai, save us. Surely the Sovereign One will respond to us on the day we call out. As befits your abundant love, please forgive this people's sin just as you have always forgiven this people, from the time of the Exodus from Egypt until now. When Moses recited this prayer, it is recorded, Adonai said, I forgive as you asked.
Slach na la'avon ha'am hazeh kegodel chastecha, v'chasher nasata la'am hazeh mimitzrayim ve'ad hena, v'sham ne'emar.
Vayomer Adonai, salachti kidvarecha, Vayomer Adonai, salachti kidvarecha, Vayomer Adonai, salachti kidvarecha.
We rise on page 233.
Shema kolenu Adonai Eloheinu, chus v'rachem aleinu, v'kabel berachamim u'veratzon et tfilatenu. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva, chadesh yamenu kekedem. Al tashlichenu milfanecha, v'ruach kadshecha al tikach mimenu. Al tashlichenu le'et zikna, kichlot kochenu, al ta'azvenu.
Continue on page 234.
Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu, selach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu, ki anu amecha ve'ata Eloheinu, anu vanecha ve'ata avinu, anu avadecha ve'ata Adonenu, אנו כעליך ואתה חלקנו, אנו נחלתך ואתה גורלנו, אנו צונך ואתה רוענו, אנו חרמך ואתה נוטרנו, אנו פעולתך ואתה יוצרנו, אנו רעייתך ואתה דודנו, אנו סגולתך ואתה קרובנו, אנו עמך ואתה מלכנו, אנו מאמירך ואתה מאמירנו.
אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, תבוא לפניך תפילתנו, ואל תתעלם מתחינתנו, שאין אנחנו הזיפנים וקשי עורף. לומר לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו, ואלוהי אבותינו, צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו, אבל אנחנו חטאנו, אבל אנחנו חטאנו.
Ay, 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 ay. Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi, Ay, 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 ay. Hevinu, Vihirshanu, Zadnu, Chamasnu, Tafalnu Sheker, Ay, 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 ay. Yatznura, Kizavnu, Latznu, Maradnu, Niatznu, Sararnu, Avinu, Hashanu, Sararnu, Kishinu Oref, Ay, 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 ay. Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Tainu, Titanu, Sarnu mimitzvotecha mimishpatecha hatovim velo shavalanu, ve'ata tzadik al kol haba alenu, kemet asita v'anachnu hirshanu.
We read together on 235 at the top. We abuse, we betray, we are cruel, we destroy, we embitter, we falsify, we gossip, we hate, we insult, We jeer, we kill, we lie, we mock, we neglect, we oppress, we pervert, we quarrel, we rebel, we steal, we transgress, we are unkind, we are violent, we are wicked, we are extremists, we yearn to do evil, we are zealous for bad causes. Page 237.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביצר הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביודעים ובלא יודעים.
וכולם
אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעיניים רמות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעזות מצח.
וכולם
אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בתשומת יד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בתימהון לבב.
וכולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו.
We turn to page 243.
אבינו מלכנו חטאנו לפניך במלכנו אבינו מלכנו, החזירנו בתשובה שלמה לפניך. אבינו מלכנו, שלח רפואה שלמה לחולי עמך. אבינו מלכנו, זכרנו בזיכרון טוב לפניך. אבינו מלכנו, כתבנו בספר חיים טובים. אבינו מלכנו, כתבנו בספר גאולה וישועה. אבינו מלכנו, כתבנו בספר פרנסה וכלכלה. אבינו מלכנו, כתבנו בספר זכויות. אבינו מלכנו, כתבנו בספר סליחה ומחילה. אבינו מלכנו.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vanenu, Ki en banu masim. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, ve'hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Ve'alema divrachute v'yamlich malchute b'chayechon u'b'yom echon u'b'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'b'zman kariv v'imeru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam le'almei almaya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela le'ela mikol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imeru amen. Titkal batzloton u'va'oton d'chol Yisrael kadam avuhon divishmaya v'imeru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
Page 246, we remain standing for Aleinu L'Shabeach.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל נותן.
אוקיי, נקבל לך. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
נאמר והיה אדוני למלך
Today, the 10th of Tishrei, our congregation observes one congregational yard site, that of Lee S. Weisberg. In the coming week, we'll also observe those of Sydney Mossman, Dorothy Albright, Selma Bush, Anna Zenoff Lieb, and Nellie Schnur. We think as well at this time of those individuals whom people in our congregation have lost within the last year or who've been lost to us in the last year. Among them, Sonia Wachowski, Jonas J. Zucker, Jerry Abramowitz, Selma Horowitz Abramowitz, Hannah Pauline Rubin, S. David Freeman, Eddie Hare, Ruth Guller, Dov Chazoni, Sylvia Uziel, Marilyn Roman, and Hank Stern. If there's anyone else whom you're thinking of at this time and would like to mention, I'll invite you to do so. Kaddish Tom Mornis Kaddish is found on page 247. If you're reciting Kaddish, please rise and join me. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ba'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach la'alam v'l'olamei almaya. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitramam, v'yitnasei, v'yithadar, v'yit'aleh, v'yithalal, shemei, t'kudisha, b'richu, la'ela mikol berchata, v'shirata, tush b'chata, v'nechamata, da'amiran v'alama, v'imru, amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chayim, aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Waseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Turn to page 248. Please join me in the English up until the sung part for Achat Sha'alti. Adonai is my light and my help, whom shall I fear? Adonai is the stronghold of my life, whom shall I dread? When evil people assail me to devour my flesh, it is they, my enemies, and those who besiege me, who stumble and fall. Should an armed camp be arrayed against me, my heart would show no fear. Should they war against me, of this I would be sure. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai ota avakesh. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai ota avakesh. Shivti beveit Adonai kol yemei chayai lachazot benoam Adonai ulvaker beichalo lachazot benoam Adonai ulvaker beichalo kitz beneni b'sukah. Lulehem ati liropetu v'Adonai be'eretz chayim kaveh el Adonai chazak v'yametz libecha v'kaveh el Adonai. Announcements.
Tomorrow morning, our Yom Kippur morning service begins at 10 a.m. Our Yom Kippur afternoon and Elah service starts at 6 p.m. We have a special service scheduled for Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. Sarah Barnard will be reciting Kaddish for her mother's yahrzeit that evening, and as many of us as possible who could join that, we'll really appreciate that. You may have noticed there were no bags for Project Isaiah this year. Well, it is a partial victim of the coronavirus, but by no means a complete one. Our Jewish family service is sponsoring a Sukkot food drive to help keep the shelves of the Heldman Family Food Pantry filled this fall. On Sunday, October the 18th, from 9 a.m. until 12 p.m., we can all help fill the Barbash Family Vital Support Center van at a contact-free drive-by and drop-off. It's at the Adath Israel Congregation parking lot. If you go to Jewish Family Services website, they can give you a lot more details. A note of thanks, without the help of many, many volunteers and our dedicated staff, completely revamping our service, installing live streaming equipment, and enabling so many of you, whether here in person or joining us on a live stream, would not have been possible. Our service leaders have just been extraordinary, particularly tonight, led by Ari Cohen and Leanne Galeotto. You two really have made a difference in our service. Our ushers are as loyal as ever. Lynn Cohell, Edie Neusner, Sarah Barnard, and Ron Richards. Thank you so much. And now for a special thank you from Rabbi Farrow for our technician, without whom the live streaming experience would not nearly be as good
Definitely.
as it is.
Hara Joan, thank you, Hara. You're back there somewhere. There you go, waving. Thank you. Very happy to have you with us this year. And we will conclude our service here on page 250 with Yigdal.
Yigdal Elohim chai ve'yishtabach nimtza ve'enet el mitziuto echad ve'en yachid ke'yichudo ne'lam ve'gam en sof le'achduto en lo demut haguf ve'eno guf lo naroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon ve'en reshit le'reshito Hino Adon Olam V'chol Notzar Yoreh Gedulato U'malchuto Shefa Nevuato Netano El Anshe Segulato V'tifarto Lo kam Yisrael Kemo she'od Navi umabit Et emunato Torah emet natan le'amoel Al yad nevio Neman beito Lo yachalif ha'el Velo yamir dato Le'olamim lezulato Tzofe ve'yodea Setarenu Mabit lesof davar Bekadmato Gomel ish chesed Kemifalo Noten lirashara Kerishato Yishlach leketz yamin Meshichenu Liftot mechakeket Yeshuato Metim yechael Be'erov chasto Baruch adeyad Shem Tehilato, Meitim Yechayel, Berov Chasto, Baruch Adei Ad, Shem Tehilato.
One final thank you. You've noticed the flowers. Flowers really enlighten and embolden and bring these services to life. Our Rosh Hashanah flowers were brought to us by Karen and Joe Lazier, and Lois Pornoy has brought us these absolutely gorgeous flowers for Yom Kippur. Thank you so much for thinking of a long-standing Northern Hills tradition and keeping it going, notwithstanding COVID-19.
Not canceled, the flowers. I'm wishing all of you good things. Those of you whom I will see tomorrow, I look forward to seeing you again. Yishar Kol Hachem to our service leader tonight, Ari Cohen, and our soloist, Leanne Galiotto. And for those of you who I will not see, I wish you certainly a good continuation and conclusion of your Yom Kippur. If you are fasting, may you have an easy fast, and may all of you be blessed and sealed for a good year. L'shana tova techatemu. Good Yom Tov. And Tzom Kal.
If you could bring your books to the back of the social hall, there are two tables. One is for those of you who will be returning, and the other is for those of you who will be live streaming for the balance of Yom Kippur.